So this setting that you're looking at now, I would advise for a traditional setting in a middle school or a high school, or if you have a group that's veteran teachers and they're wanting to do revision or they're wanting to take their work and just move. Here's the advantages of this setup. You can see right here we have Christy, who's going to be placing all the standards or indicators on the map as we work. The advantage is when we finish, Christy will have had a completed map, and if you see Dr. Sherry over here, she would be putting the standards by quarter in. So when the teachers leave, your map is completed and your standards by quarter are completed. So that is a terrific advantage. The disadvantage is that person, Christy, has a lot of pressure, so you need to have someone who feels comfortable cutting and pasting and trying to keep up with the conversation. The standards by quarter is a lot easier because as Christy posts them, of course, she could post that. So I think the next thing to consider is who belongs at the table. I would urge you as much as possible to try to make sure that your staff is in the building together. Now I know with all the things that are going on that may be impossible, but I think as you see the work later on that we're going to be doing, it's really difficult to get real efficiency without having the people here. So who should be at the table? If this were an elementary school table, here's who I would have. I'd have my classroom teachers. I'd have someone proficient at making sure they know how to use Excel and be able to put them on the standards, put the standards on that template. And then I would have my special educator. If you're in grade 1 and you have a reading recovery teacher, I'd have that reading recovery teacher there. If you have an interventionist, I'd have them there. And I'd certainly make sure that my special educator was at every session, because special educators are supposed to be finding ways of using standards as their interventions. So have people at the table. If you have the luxury of having people come, why not have the kindergarten teacher or the second grade teacher sit in the first grade map? That way they can see what's coming up and they can see what's leaving. If nothing more, they should take some time to reviewing. So again, this situation is great for middle school if you're traditional and you're standalone. If you have your science teachers teaching strictly science, doesn't care what math is doing, or your math person is teaching math, this is a great situation to set up because at the end of the time you're done. In Rock Hill, I had the great fortune of working with the very best teachers, and they were extremely anxious to get the map so that they could begin working immediately on their summer plans and programs and things that they're going to do to use those standards. So this is the first and the traditional setup. So the second setting we want you to look at, we've got the big board here. You can see that the big board is a big board. And this is really what I would advise if you're beginning mapping for the first time. I would advise this if you're working with young and new teachers. I know some of you have a grade level where you will have no veteran teachers. If you can get them in the same room and do this kind of a situation, I think they'll really learn. The other thing is, if you're doing integrated curriculum like IB, PYP, MYP, you're doing STEM or STEAM, you're doing project-based learning, I don't know how you can do that without doing this. Forget the mapping, because we'll talk about that in a minute, but if you are doing integrated curriculum, I really think you need to do this every single year, and you start with your projects or you start with your themes. So let's kind of go over what's on the board. If this were typical elementary school, you might start with social studies. Social studies is usually the easiest to get up because usually there's a chronology to it. So it makes it very simple for you to put up all of the standards that you need. The difficulty comes when you find out that you might have six key concepts that you need to do, and you only have 4 quarters to get it done. So the other thing that you can look at is up on the top, you'll notice on the template that we have, we have a space where you can put in theme or big idea. If you're a UBD person, you know what big idea is. Or if you're project-based learning, what's the project? And that project then should drive the standards. So if you look here, there is some logic for putting social studies and ELA together. The typical elementary school does more integration with social studies and ELA than probably any other content area. It's very simple to do the reading, very simple to do those things. So even if you're doing traditional, this is a great way to go because you can take the social studies and have it pick up some of the reading, writing that's supposed to happen in ELA. Math and science, of course, that makes sense because that's an easier place to integrate. If you're a STEAM or a STEM school, probably you want to switch these around and maybe have science and math here. Because what should be reflected in your theme or your integrated content is that we are a science school. We are a STEM school. We're an engineering school. We're a math school. And that should be seen throughout your content. If you're project-based learning, what is your project? How can we fit the 4 core into it? If you're only doing 2 core, that's fine. But if you're going to try to do a 4 core integrated theme, whether it's middle school or high school or elementary school, I think you need to do this. If you're doing middle school or high school, maybe the social studies person comes in with their map pre-done. Your English person comes in with their map pre-done, math person and science person. Then as you develop your theme or your project, then how can I as a social studies teacher switch this around? And how can the ELA person switch theirs around so that we have here strength all the way through that integration? Just one notice that I had, tell you a quick story. We have a school in Rock Hill that is doing project-based learning. And we went to their day where they showed their projects, and it was an amazing day. The kids' communication skills were out of the roof. But what bothered me is one of the projects that got real high acclaim was the kids built a nature trail and did 4 core integration. Well, with math, they were doing simple area and perimeter. Now that's a 5th grade standard, and this is a middle school, probably 7th grade as I remember. So they beat it to fit and painted it to match. In other words, they found a way to put math in there, but it wasn't at the standard level required. So that's why I think if you're integrating, you really need to get your experts in the building. So the people that would be at this table should be your science person, should be your math person, should be your English person. They should all be there representing their curriculum. At some point, if you are a terrific math person, you may say, look, I can't do that. And that's fine. What standards do you have to replace it? So sometimes there will be standalones where you can't do 4 core. And if that's the case, don't compromise your subject matter just to fit the bill of making sure you have the project in mind. So this works really well with your young teachers, your new teachers. They can see the standards. They have the cards prepared. One of the things that you can do is use your standards by quarter to just do a simple mail merge. Once you merge, then you can make the 3x5 cards. You can have the folks work through them. Again, if your high school folks are here or your middle school folks are here and you're doing it at that level, they need to be in the building all together and know what the themes or what the concept or what the big idea is so that they can really represent this for their building. I hope that makes sense to you. The last thing I'd like to mention, I know this may seem, when we get working, you're going to be doing some elementary work, but I want to remind you that the high school people, don't let them do this by themselves. Even if you have the best math person in the world, they're knocking it out and they're getting it done every day. don't let them do it by themselves. Have them work with someone collaboratively so that you know what's going on. If you're the principal or you're the assistant principal and you're doing the evaluation, you have to know something about that subject matter. What better way to know it than to have them present the map to you? If you let them do the map on their own, which they probably can do backwards, then you let them do that, but you're in isolation. I don't know about you, but Rich Melzer in calculus is an oxymoron. I'm horrible with calculus. But if at least I sit in on the meeting and understand why they were placed where they were, it really helps. Using my memory, I think Calhoun Falls and I think Oceanside did extremely well on algebra. Why not contact them and have them virtually hook in with your teacher? Imagine the power of the person at Oceanside and the person at Calhoun Falls working together and checking each other's map out. They can even strengthen it. But imagine if you have a brand new teacher who's never taught algebra and they're trying to do a map. You either need that person expert in your building, you can call us and we'll try to send you an expert, or at least you can contact one of the schools. We'll let you know of a school that has an algebra teacher that's knocking it out of the park, and you could work together. So even with your high school people, I would not let them work in isolation. I'd want to be part of it so that they know that you're invested in their subject, but also you're going to have to evaluate it as well. So huge advantage. I know that with the coronavirus and all that's going on, who knows that we can get together, but here would be my urging, that if you can put this off until you can get your staff there, or you can practice social distancing in a bigger room, it is so much of an advantage to have everybody here. Later on, you'll be working with the standards and you'll see that virtually it's just not the same as having that whole group here. So I hope this was a helpful visual.